This presentation is about how to use Ancestry.com effectively. So a few years ago, several people complained about they created a tree on Ancestry, but they ended up finding all these mistakes. And the problem was that they were pulling other people's trees into their tree. And that's a very quick way to build your tree, but it's really not the most effective way. So this presentation is going to show you an effective way to do that without pulling in mistakes from other people's trees. In terms of copyright, I use the Creative Commons. So you're free to use this pretty much anything you want as long as you don't sell it. Basically just non-commercial use. So you can take pictures of my presentation, you can record it, you can take my handouts and upload them to your website. Pretty much anything you want to do as long as it's non-commercial and you retain my license. Okay, so Ancestry has these hints. You've seen these little green leaves. If you've never used Ancestry, you've probably seen their commercials, and they show these little green leaves that give you hints for how to build your tree. And those are wonderful. They save a lot of time because most of these hints are good. They're, great hints, but you have to be skeptical because some of them aren't always perfect. And because they're based on trees that other people have built, and some people are more careful than others. Again, most of these hints were going to be good, but you will see a few here and there that lead you down up the wrong path. So you always need to be skeptical of the hints, and just remember that these are hints, they're not assured information. So a little bit about Ancestry size. They have over 25 million members. About 3 million of them are paying members. So there's a lot of free accounts. You don't have to pay for it. You can have a free account. They have over 60 billion sources. That's billion with a B. They process over 1 billion searches every month. And your subscription can include newspapers.com and Fold3, which are additional databases of newspapers and military-related information. So just a little bit about the cost. You can have a free account, as I mentioned. You can build a tree on there at no cost. The only thing you can't do is use their search facilities. So the free account doesn't allow you to do searching, but it does allow you to build a tree if you want. One option that some people use is that they will batch up their searches. So they'll make a list of things that they want to go research, and then they'll pay for a month. And during that month, they'll go do all this research. And at the end of the month, let the account expire and return back to a free account. You don't lose your tree when that happens. Everything is retained. You can still look at the tree. You just can't do any more searches to their database. So down below, I have the prices that you can purchase at a month at a time. You can purchase 6 months at a time. There's also a 1-year option. And there's different levels. So you can do just US records for one price, a little bit more for world records, and a little bit more for their all access, which gives you everything in the world, plus Fold3 and newspapers.com. Fold3, in case you're not familiar, is military records. And you also get free access for 4 of your friends or relatives. So 4 of your friends and relatives can create accounts and come in under your account at no additional charge. And then there's also a Pro Tools, which is an additional $10 a month. So that's the basic charges for it. But again, you can do this as a free account, just don't have the searches while it's free. Now, that gives you a tree on their website on the cloud. If you want a local tree, there's a couple of options. You can use RootsMagic or Family Tree Maker, which are both software programs that will run on your local computer, and they allow you to sync with the Ancestry tree. A third option is GEDCOM, which is a file format that allows you to download your tree into a file that you can download onto your computer and then use that to upload into some other software. And pretty much every genealogy program in existence uses GEDCOM, can generally both read and write GEDCOM. So that's one way of transferring information. Although there are some issues with the GEDCOM transfer, some of the information won't transfer over completely. You're much better off if you can use synchronization, like through RootsMagic or Family Tree Maker, but the GEDCOM is an option. Okay, so now my recommendations. First, be skeptical of hints. Most of them are good, but you will find hints here and there that lead you down a path of misinformation. And again, they're because someone built their tree thinking that was a good source record, and it wasn't. It was the wrong person. Maybe somebody that had a similar name and maybe about the same birth date, but it's not the same person. So be skeptical of them. But again, they're very handy because most of them are correct. There are some hints for other people's trees to directly look at other people's trees. And I recommend that you save those until the very end. And when you do look at those other people's trees and compare them to your tree, do not hit the save button. I strongly recommend that you never save from somebody else's tree into your tree, because you're almost assured that you're going to pull over at least some bad information. Remember, these are built by people. People make mistakes. Even as careful as I am, there are mistakes in my tree. I wish I knew where they were, but I'm sure there are some. So also only pull in sources when you're confident of the match. You need to make sure that there's sufficient information that you can say that, yes, this is the right marriage certificate or the death certificate or census record or whatever. So you have to look at other information. For example, if you're trying to find early records on, say, your great-grandfather, and you're going back to some of the early census records, you might find someone with your grandfather's name and born about the right time. But if you don't know who the parents are and the siblings, how can you say that that's really the right record? So you need to first go look at maybe some marriage records to find out. Many marriage records list the names of the parents of the bride and groom. You may find an obituary that lists siblings or possibly the parents. So until you have more information, don't just accept that record simply because it comes up as a hint. It may be incorrect. Also, verify the transcriptions. So the transcriptions of these documents are great. They're generally pretty good, but sometimes they're missing information. And we'll see this in some of the later slides. The transcription may have some of the information, but not all of it. Or it may have information transcribed incorrectly. They might have mistyped a date or something along those lines. Next is to standardize the dates and places. We'll talk more about that, but there are some standards in genealogy, the certain way that you should write a date and a place, and you should standardize those as you enter them if they're not already standardized in the transcription. Again, we'll talk more about that. And the last recommendation is to take a DNA test. That allows you to basically verify that your research is correct. So if you base your tree based on various printed records, birth certificates, death certificates, census records, whatever, some of that may have incorrect information, and DNA allows you to verify that you have it correct. Another important thing is when you're running into a situation where you think this might be the right birth certificate, for example, or census record, but you're not sure and you have some questions about it. Is this really the right one? Sometimes it's useful to print out a bunch of different source documents that you have accepted, that you know are correct, print them out, spread them out onto your desk, and just kind of get a good feel for this person's background and how, when and where they were born, where they lived, who their relations are. Take a highlighter and highlight the important information. Maybe take a different color highlighter and mark the things where you have contradictions. This document says this birth date, another document says a different birth date. Highlight those so that you get a feel for what's going on, and then you can start deciding, is this document you're looking at applied to this individual, or maybe it's some other person with just a similar name and date. So the order that I recommend in looking at the hints, or looking at the various source records, first look at the hints for the primary records. Now, in genealogy, primary record is something that is created at the time of the event, something that's contemporaneous, and it's created by someone that has firsthand knowledge. So this is things like birth certificates, death certificates, marriage records, things that are created at the time of the event by someone who knows, has firsthand information of that event. Second, look at the secondary sources. And so these are things like census records, tombstones, things that may not have been created at the time of the event. We think of tombstones as being created at the time of death, but many times they're created years later. So you don't always know how current they are. And they're given by people who may or may not have the information correct. So, but tombstones and census records and things in that secondary category generally are pretty good. So you want to take a look at those. And then when you've exhausted those, the quality records, then you want to click the search button. The search button allows you to go in and do your own searches for your own documents, your own census records, obituaries, whatever. When you finish that, then take a look at some of the lower quality sources, things where people have maybe uploaded a story about their family. Well, that's not really an official record. It's kind of a lower quality source, but can be useful. And then finally, look at the hints for other people's trees. And remember, don't click the save on this. Take a look at it and evaluate whether or not they have better information than you. Maybe they found some source that you overlooked. So sometimes you'll find information in other people's trees that's useful and correct, but again, be very skeptical of it. So here we're going to take a look at a page from the website, and here we're looking at the hints page. All right, so we see here that there are 8 hints on this person, and the first hint is Mamie Evelyn Prince in Lori family tree. Now, this in, and you see this little tree symbol here, this is what tells you this is somebody else's tree. So this is the hint for someone else's tree, and you need to be careful of these. Frequently, they have good information, but I recommend that you save these to the very end. The reason is that they may cloud your judgment in looking at the other source documents. So, for example, they may list the spouse, and that may be wrong. They may have the wrong person as the spouse. So you see that, and you have it in your head that that is the spouse of this person. And as you go look at records, you may see a record that lists some other person as the spouse, and you may say, no, that one's not right, and you reject it, when it really is the correct information. So that's why I recommend saving these to the end, because you don't want them to bias your opinion when you look at the records. So let's take a look at primary records. So in this case, it's a death certificate. So this is a hint for a death certificate. And it says that right up here at the top. This is a death certificate. Okay, so we're going to pretend that we're going to click on this review button, and this is what you'll get. So now we see a small, you can't really read it, but a small image of that source document, and then the information that was transcribed. So here we see the name, the death date, the death place, and some other information here. Now at the bottom it says, does the Mamie E. Kelly in this record match the person in your tree? Now, I remember when I first got my Ancestry account years ago, I looked at that question and I said, well, I don't have enough information. I don't know if this is the right person. And I was afraid to click the yes button because I was afraid it was going to take all that and put it into my tree. I wish they would really reword this question to say, do you think it's possible that this is the match? And would you like to look at more information? Because that's what really is going on here. Clicking yes is not going to put anything into your tree. It's just going to say, here's some more detailed information that you can evaluate. So we're going to hit the yes button, and that brings us to this page. So on the left is the transcribed information from the tree, and I've blown it up here so it's easy to read. And on the right is the information that you already have in your own tree. So currently we only have our first and last name, and it's copied over the death information. You notice that this check mark over here, you can check these to bring over the name, bring over the date, bring over whatever information has been transcribed. This check mark is already put there because I didn't have a death date. I had nothing for the death. So this was automatically brought over. I can uncheck it if I don't like that and take it away, or I can check this button and bring over the name. But notice the surname doesn't match. This is Kelly, and I had Prince. Well, Prince is their maiden name. So Kelly, maybe that's the married name, or maybe this is the wrong person. We really don't have enough information here because the only thing that matches is the first name, Mamie. So based on this, I would have to say, no, I'm going to reject this because I don't think this is the right record. But let's take a look at the image of the original document. So here we see highlighted in yellow all the things that the transcriber failed to enter. First, we see highlighted in yellow here that we have the full middle name, but in the transcription, there's just the middle initial. Okay, something missing from the transcription. And look over here, we have the death was on the 20th of February, but the transcription just says February. So again, another piece of information that was not transcribed. Now, I will say that most transcriptions are better than this one. This one is, I would say, one that has an unusual amount of missing information. For example, the birth date and birthplace, not in the transcription, but they're there. So that's another hint that, well, I know that she lived in Illinois. I know that she was born in 1894. We see that over here. So that's a good match. And oh, look over here, the father's name, the mother's name. I know her father's and mother's name, and these match. So now that I've looked at the original image of the source record, I can confidently say, yes, this is the right person. From the transcription, I would have to reject it and say, no, this is maybe not the right person. But once I look at the source document, the original image, I can see that, yes, this is a match. And over here, I see the name of her husband, which I didn't know before this. So a lot of information that was missing. Again, most transcriptions are better than this one, but you do occasionally see some with a fair amount of it missing information or incorrect information. The transcription has only limited information. So when I save this to my tree, I'm saving only what I have entered over here by checking check boxes over here, or I can go in here and manually type into these. So I can go in and manually type in the 20th in the date. And then when I click to save, that will save that date. But there's no place that I can enter the birthplace and date. Okay, there's no place for me to enter that here. So when I hit the save, I will not be saving the birth information. So we're going to pretend we're hitting the save button. So now we come back to the main screen. We're over on the facts column here. So in the facts column, we have facts on the left, we have sources in the middle, and then relationships on the right. Now, if I click the fact over here, this death certificate, it will draw a line to the two facts that it supports. Notice it's not drawing a line to the birth because that wasn't in the transcription. We need to fix that. We need to put in the birth place and date and then link it to this source. So we're going to click this and we come to this screen. Now, initially you'll come to the Edit Fact tab on this screen where you would enter the information, but I'm just showing you the Attach Source tab on this screen. So after you finished editing the fact, you click on the Attach Source. It will list all the sources that are currently attached and then all the sources for this person that are not attached. So here's this death certificate that we know actually is supporting the date that we've just manually entered. So we're going to hit the plus symbol, and that will save this fact to the birth date. So now if we click this fact over here, it links to the birth. So that's how you deal with information that's missing from the transcription, where you have to manually enter it because it wasn't there. So after you've gone through all the birth certificates, death, marriage, the main sources and the secondary sources, then you finally want to go to the search button in the upper right-hand corner and do your own search. So when we click that, we're going to get a page that looks something like this. So here we have the list of the sources it's found, and notice it's saying it's giving us 1 to 20 of over 400,000. Okay, that's pretty typical that you're going to get a huge number of matches. The first ones are the higher quality, and as you go farther back, you see lower quality. So it's giving it to us 20 in a page. So I don't have it all on the screen here, but you could scroll down and see additional, the first 20 sources listed over here. And generally, they do a pretty good job of sorting it to the higher quality at the beginning. So the first page is generally where you're going to find the good matches. Take a look at the second and third page, maybe the fourth and fifth, but generally by the time you get past about the second or third page, most of the things you find are other people, not the person you're looking for. So most of it will be on the first page, but definitely take a look at least another page or two beyond the first page. If you're getting a lot of good hits on the first page, that tells you should look at more pages. If you're only getting one hint or no hints that match on the first page, then you might not be spending good time by looking at a lot of additional pages. So if you look over here on the left, you see some sliders. These sliders allow you to adjust how broad or narrow you want the search to be. Remember, we had over 400,000 hits here. So we might want to slide some of these over to be more exact, because you know that this is the right name. If it's broad, then it's going to look at names that are similar. For example, it might show you someone with the initials ME, but different names, but the initials match. So it'll show it to you. As you slide this to the right, you see less and less of that. This is the surname, and notice that it's printing both surnames that we saw, the Prince and the Kelly, because one's a maiden name, one's a married name. So it leaves both of them in the surname field. And again, you can slide that back and forth. You have dates, you have places, you can slide those back and forth as to how precise you want them to be, or how broad. And then down at the bottom left, you have filters. So here we have census and voter list. So if I click on that, it will remove all of these 400,000 that are not census and voter lists. You can click on birth, marriage, and death, and it'll show you only the ones that are of those three types. And notice to the left, you have these little pointer symbols. If you click that, that opens up subcategories. So subcategories of birth, marriage, and death would be birth, marriage, and death. So you could then say, well, I only want to look at the marriage records. I don't want to see birth and death, just the marriage. So you click this to open up the subcategories, and you click on marriage. Some of these will have subcategories. So that allows you to narrow your search by type of record. And then finally, I want to point out that up here, that some people tend to overlook, is a little pencil symbol. If you click that pencil symbol, it allows you to go in and directly edit the form used to perform this search. So here we have a bit more control than just those sliders. We can go in and change the birth year. We can change the birth location, death, date and place, lived in date and place. We can add a marriage. We can add other events. You can also remove events if you think that might be narrowing your search too much, and maybe you want to broaden things out, that maybe you're skeptical of this birth. You can remove it, and that'll give you more results in your search. Down here you have family members. It's already filled in for us, the father and the mother, and some siblings. If you think some of those are maybe questionable, you could remove them. Or you can edit the name. If you think maybe the name is not right, you can, just for the purposes of the search, this is not changing your tree. For the purpose of the search, go in and edit this information. Also, you notice these checkboxes that occur under the dates and the places. If I click this checkbox, I'll get a little pop-up that looks like this. So how exact do you want to make this? Do you want to make it this year and nothing but that year? Maybe plus or minus a year, plus or minus 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So if you're really not sure of when someone was born, but you know, based on, well, when they had kids, when they got married, they must have been born around this time, you can put in a date in the middle of that time period and click the plus or minus 10. Now you have a 20-year span that you're looking at. And if you don't find anything, oh, maybe they were born before that. So maybe go in and enter an earlier date, maybe move it back 10 years or 15 years and look at another 20-year span farther back in time. And so you can play around with this to get different results on your search. If I click the checkbox under a location, then I get something that looks like this. So do I only want to consider events that occurred in this place, or maybe the whole county, or maybe the county and adjacent counties, or maybe the whole state, or the state and adjacent states, or the whole country? Now, the exact list that you get here depends on what you've typed. If you only typed in a state, then obviously you're not going to get the county and information. It'll just be state and adjacent states and the country. But this allows you to vary how broad your search is with a little bit more precision than those sliders. And again, you can edit this up here. So if you think maybe I have 2 or maybe 3 different possible birth locations and you don't know which one's right, try another one. Just go in and type the city or county or whatever into here and try the search with that and see what you get. So this gives you a lot more control by using that pencil icon to go in and edit how your search is performed. Okay, so other people's trees. So once you've searched through the higher quality hints and you've done your own search and you've exhausted everything and you can't find any more information, now it's time to go look at other people's trees. But remember that, and this says may contain mistakes. I should change that to will contain mistakes. I mean, these are created by people. People make mistakes. So when you look at these other trees, you're almost certain that there will be at least something wrong in what you look at. Maybe something pretty minor, but there's likely to be a mistake there. So be skeptical. Save these until the end. Again, you don't want to cloud your judgment based on other people's mistakes, because that will give you a bias toward these errors. And it's important to look at how many source citations they have. What I've found is that when I look at other people's trees, they tend to have very few sources or sometimes no sources at all. So let's take a look at one here. So here is where I'm looking at this tree created by somebody else. This is the information in their tree. This is the information in my tree on the right. Now, it looks like everything pretty much matches. Let me zoom in here, except the death date. And it automatically highlights that in yellow when there's a difference between your tree and the other person's tree. So everything in this other person's tree matches what I found, but they have a different death date. Also notice that I have 21 sources in my tree. They have 1 source. So right there, that makes me a bit skeptical. Somebody that has no sources or only 1 or 2 sources, either they're not a very careful genealogist, or maybe they really haven't spent much time on this person. And now there's a lot of people in my tree that have maybe 1 source because I found them in a census record or a marriage record or whatever, and I just haven't gone to that person to flesh them out yet. But in any case, this person has only 1 source, so that's a red flag that says be careful with this. This may be a careless researcher, or maybe they just haven't done much work on it yet. So let's take a look at this 1 source that they do have. Well, it turns out it's a death certificate. And what does the death certificate say? September 15, 1948. That matches what I have, September 15th of 1948. So I don't know where this 9 comes from, but it didn't come from this source record, or they maybe made a typo, I'm not sure. But in any case, I've now determined that this variance between their tree and my tree is not legitimate. I do have the right date. It is really the 15th, not the 9th. Okay, so this is what you need to do when you're looking at other people's trees. Take a look at their sources. They may have found a source that you had missed, and you may find that, oh, this source has additional information that I don't have because I didn't find it in my search. I don't find that too often, but once in a while I will find somebody else's tree that has a source that I hadn't found yet, and that allows me to expand my tree and add more information. But most of the time, I find that they have very few sources, and the few sources they have don't add anything. And generally, they're sources I've already found as part of my 21 over here. But definitely take a look at it and see if that can convince you that they're right and you're wrong. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is standardizing dates and places. When you're looking at your date and place fields in your records, if you click on a date, like this is March 7, 1872, which is a non-standard date as far as genealogists are concerned. Now that's the way most people write a date, but that's not the way we do it in genealogy. So if you click on this date, it will pop up this little box here with a standard form of the date. And sometimes there's more than one because it may be ambiguous. So for example, if the transcribed date was 3/4/19, 3/4, well, is that month day or is it day month? Now in the US, we generally write the month first, so it would be month/day. But in Europe, they write it the other way around. They will write the day/month. So where did this record come from? Is this an American style or a European style? So that's why we never record a date in genealogy with the month number. We always use the month name, always. And we always put the date to the left of the month and the year to the right. And we always include a 4-digit year. So that, what was it, 3/4/19. What is that 19? Is that 2019 or is it 1919 or is it 1819? Always enter the full year. Don't ever enter a 2-digit year. You always use 4-digit years in genealogy. So this is the standard format for a date. And if you click the field up here, it will pop down a little box with how it thinks it should be. And again, there may be more than one because it may be ambiguous because of month numbers instead of month names. So you simply click the one that's correct, and that will replace it for you. You don't have to retype it. You just click it, and it'll fill in this standardized format for the date. Similarly, on places, if you click the place, it will pop up a box with some choices. Now, it turns out there's a Vigo, Indiana as a city, or as a county here, so Vigo County, but there's also a Vigo City over in Knox County. Well, which one is this? Well, you're going to have to go look at the original image of the document and see if you can get some hints to figure out where is this. You may not be able to figure out which one it is. It may just be that it's Vigo, you don't know which one it is, and you may be forced to leave your place in this non-standard form that doesn't list the county. Okay, so it should either, if you know where it is, it should either say whatever county in the state and in the country, or it should list the county as an additional field. Now, we list the county because in many cases the record is stored at the county level. Some records are stored at the state level, some are stored at the county level. So knowing the county is useful because that may tell you where to find additional records on this person. So that's why we always list the county when we enter these places. Another thing is, let's say somebody just enters a place as Georgia. Well, that may seem obvious that it's the state of Georgia, but what if it's the country of Georgia? So we always enter the country as the last field. Even if it may seem obvious to you, you still want the USA or Canada or whatever country it is, you want to enter that so that you're completely unambiguous about what this is. Because there are a lot of places around the world that are ambiguous because they appear in multiple countries or multiple whatever. So this allows you to standardize your dates and your places. And I highly recommend that you do that for everything in your tree. So every time you click the save on a new record, if some of the dates or places aren't in standard form, go in and click that field and choose the right one to standardize it. You'll find that will help you down the road. Okay, so now I want to talk about DNA. This can help you verify your search, verify that your research, that you built your tree correctly. So one of the things I like to say is you can frequently find who the mother is with a high degree of certainty. The mother of a person, if you have a birth certificate, you have high confidence that you know who the mother is. But the father is always hearsay. So think about that. The information about the birth and the mother on that birth certificate is written by the hospital or wherever the birth occurred by someone who was there, present at the time. So it's contemporary, it's firsthand knowledge. But the father, where does that come from? Well, they ask the mother, who was the father? Did she tell a lie? You don't know. So the identity of the father is always hearsay, even if you have it on a birth certificate. The father is always hearsay. DNA will help you verify that you have the right father. You're not going to get that from anything else. Unless you have DNA evidence, the father is always hearsay. So this also allows you to clear up other things that may be incorrect in the records. Census records, it is well known that people put bad information in the census records. Sometimes the census record couldn't find the person at home, so they went next door and said, "Oh, tell me about your neighbors next door." And the neighbor gets most of it right, but maybe there's a few details they didn't get right. So DNA will help you verify those things. Another common one that I've seen is you see, especially in the early census records, like the 1850, 60, 70, that don't list relation to head of household. You see a father, you see a male, you see a female of maybe the same or similar age, and then you see some males and females that are much younger, and you assume, well, father, mother, children. Yeah, but that one over there, that's a cousin that was living with them. That happens. So even though you do your research and you're trying to be careful, you will pick up those kinds of mistakes now and then. DNA will help you verify that you got it right. Ancestry has a feature called ThruLines that helps you figure out who your DNA matches are and how they relate to you. Basically, if your DNA match built a tree on Ancestry and somebody in their tree matches someone in your tree, ThruLines software will automatically say, hey, this is how that person is related to you. You don't have to do any additional research. It just tells you automatically, this is how that relationship looks. So I suggest that you take the DNA test through Ancestry and get your relatives. Get your siblings and your parents to take the test. Get your grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and even the more distant relatives. The more people that you have taking this test, the better results you'll have. So the standard price, full list price of the DNA kit is $99. Basically, it's just a saliva sample. So you spit into a tube, you mail it back to them, and they give you the results. However, they're frequently on sale. So unless you're in a hurry, you don't have to pay the $99. It quite frequently comes on sale for 10, 20% off, 30% off. I've seen it as low as half price. That's not very often, but easily you can get a 10 to 20, maybe 30% discount off of that if you wait for, say, some holiday, Christmas. They tend to use pretty much any holiday as an excuse to knock a few dollars off of it. So you can always get it a little bit cheaper. It will list your DNA cousins or, well, your DNA relationships. They may not be cousins. It could be your parent or child takes the test. They'll show up as the list. So it's not just cousins. And it will also give you an ethnicity breakdown. So it'll tell you that this percentage of your ancestry is in this country and another percentage in some other country or region of the world. The ThruLines needs a common ancestor in your tree and the other person's tree in order to do its job. Frequently, what I find is that I have a match on my DNA for some second cousin, third cousin, whatever, and I go look and, well, they didn't even bother to build a tree. They just took the test. Or they built a tree, they put in themselves, they put in their parents, and then they stopped. Maybe they put in their grandparents and then stopped. But they didn't really build a very big tree. So if they're a third cousin, and all they listed was their parents and maybe their grandparents, and all I build in my tree is my ancestors, we're not going to have anybody in common. ThruLines won't be able to connect up because there's nobody that's in my tree and their tree. But if I go to my ancestors and I build the tree down, in other words, don't just put in their child that is your ancestor, put in all the children of the family, put in the grandchildren, maybe even put in the great-grandchildren. The farther down you build from your ancestors, the more likely you are to get a match through the ThruLines. So I recommend that not only do you build your tree with your ancestors, but take all of your ancestors and come back down. I generally try to come down into the people born in the 1900s, mid-1900s if possible. Of course, if you get past the census records that are available, it gets a bit more difficult. But getting to the mid-1900s, that's pretty easy. It can be a lot of work. One of my great-great-grandparent couples, I did their entire tree down to the mid-1900s. It took almost a year. Well, this couple had, I think it was 13 or 14 children, and most of their children had similarly very large families on down. So it was a huge tree to build. It took me months and months to do that. But it gives me lots of hits on ThruLines. So it was well worth the effort. So here's what ThruLines looks like. So here's me over here in the bottom right. This is my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandfather. And here's a cousin. Now, if I didn't know who Paul was, well, he's my first cousin. I know who he is. But if I didn't, this would tell me how I'm related to him through my Uncle Dean. Similarly, over here, there's a couple of great aunts. This great aunt has 10 descendants that match my DNA. So 10 of her descendants took the Ancestry DNA test, and it determined that they're matches. And if I click this, then it will open up the tree down here and show me how they are related to me. And similarly over here under Cora Jane, if I were to click her link, then it would show me the 11 descendants of hers and how they're related to me. But again, this is only if your tree and their tree has someone in common, so it can figure this out. So again, you want to build your tree down from your ancestors to their descendants. That's the end of my presentation, so I'm going to stop the share.
Yes, there are questions. All right. So the very first one is, how does Pro Tools work? Has Pro Tools been helpful with your own tree? If so, how?
It has some verification tools. Frankly, I haven't used it a whole lot. I do pay for it, but it's not something I really had the time to dig into. I've been president of the Arkansas Genealogical Society for the last 4 years. And so in the last 4 years, I've not done a whole lot of research on my own family simply because there's so much work involved. Uh, um, I'm not going to be president next year. I've told them that they need to find somebody else. And so hopefully next year I'll be able to do some more research and dig into the Pro Tools, which I've been paying for a couple of years, but haven't really used very effectively. But there are a number of things in there that allow you to verify your tree. Things like, gee, the mother you list here was born the year after the child. And that's a little suspicious. So it'll catch all those kinds of things and a lot of other things.
The next one's kind of interesting. This person's ancestry tree information is correct to the best of their knowledge, but they're getting emails from Ancestry offering information on their husband. However, they named their stepfather as their husband and maternal grandfather as her father, and she can't find a place on Ancestry to ask them to correct this error. Basically, stop the emails. Any advice?
I'm not quite sure what the issue is here. So is the tree built wrong or?
The tree's built correctly, but it looks like somebody else's tree is incorrect, and Ancestry
Ah,
keeps emailing her suggestions that are wildly incorrect.
okay. Now I haven't run into that. It will give me hints for these errors in other people's trees, and you can. There is an option on at the bottom of the hint to ignore it, and it was up on the screen. Well, I'm be hard to bring it up, but if you look at the page, you have different tabs. You have the facts, you have the hints, etc. And one of those is, or if you go to the hints, then you have another page that has different tabs, and one of those is ignored hints. And so you can ignore a hint. It doesn't delete it, but it just moves it over to the ignored column instead of the column of things that you've not considered. So there's a column of hints that you've not looked at yet, the ones that you've accepted, the ones that you ignored. Okay. So, but as far as getting email, I don't know. I've never run into that situation where they've sent me email about things that they think are wrong in my tree.
I imagine you can just unsubscribe. Someone put in the chat to call Ancestry and ask.
Yeah, there is a phone number you can call them, and they're very friendly. I've called them 2 or 3 times. I mean, not very often, but I've called them, and there's very helpful people on the other end of the line.
Very true. Well, thank you. Early on, I saved sources from others' trees. Then I chose not to see others' trees. Will my earlier saved sources from others' trees still be part of my tree?
Once you put them into the tree, you can delete the source. There's an option if you click on it. You can open up that source, and there's an option to delete it, and then go over to the facts and remove the information that came from that source that's bad. And it's kind of a mess to clean it up once you've put a source into your tree. That's why I suggest that you be very careful about what sources you put in, because once you put that in, it gets its fingers kind of all over the place, and cleaning that up can be a real mess. Now, when I first started Ancestry, I was trying to learn the interface, and so I said, what the heck, I'm just going to click all these leaves and see what happens. And I sucked in a lot of mistakes from other people's trees, but it was a learning experience, and I knew that it was just a learning experience. And after a month or so playing around with it and getting to understand the interface, I deleted that tree, just deleted the whole tree and started over from scratch. And my current tree is called, I think it's something like Scott Lee with sources. So everything has a source that I verified to the best of my ability is the correct source. And again, not pulling in things from other people's trees, verifying it myself. But once you pull a source in, it can be a mess to clean it up.
What is Smart Search?
That is the feature that I have not. Well, I tried it the other day, and I can't really go into any details of what that is. But as best I can tell, they're using artificial intelligence to help you with the search. I really haven't had the time to dig into it, so I really can't say much about that. Give
That's
it a
fair.
try. It looks interesting. I did look at it once a few weeks ago.
Scott, when viewing census records, do you find the earlier census record can be a little more accurate than a later census record because the person is a little younger?
Yes. So when I'm looking at census records, if I know I'm coming down the tree, so I'm looking at descendants of my ancestors, so I know when they were born from a census record, usually, the one that was the first one they appear in. I will look at the census records in chronological order. So if I find them, say, in the 1850 census, then I'll look at the 1860 census next. And generally, what I find is that the earlier the census, the more accurate the date. And so as you get out into where the person is in their middle age or older, it tends to vary by more and more years, especially for women.
Is it possible to keep the family tree I'm creating private? And if so, how can I do that?
Yes, that's a good point. I probably should have brought that out. You can create multiple trees. And for each tree, you can control how public it is. So when you create the tree, when you first create that tree and put the first person in there, there's a button to make it private. There's also another feature, and you can always go back in later after the fact and change the privacy of a tree from public to private or private to public. And then there's an additional checkbox and this isn't presented as you create the tree, but if you go back in later, go into the menu across the top and select your tree, and go into I think it's called edit the tree, or I forgot exactly what it's called, where you're manipulating the tree as a whole, not as individuals within the tree, just the tree as a whole. There's a checkbox that you can say also exclude this from searches. And if I'm going to make it private, I also go in and check that checkbox, because even a private tree will show up in searches. So somebody might search for somebody and it'll say, hey, here's this tree from Scott Lee, but I won't show it to you. Just that there's something there, but I won't show it to you because it's private. I like to uncheck that box so that it doesn't even show up in their search. And the reason I do that is because sometimes, especially if I'm working for somebody else, doing somebody else's genealogy, I may cheat and do some nasty things like suck in somebody else's tree into this tree, just because I'm trying to build something real quickly to get a feel for what's going on. And that's kind of violating the rule because it may bias me to these mistakes, but sometimes I'll do that, and I'll build this tree for an hour or two, and then I'll say, okay, I kind of get a feel for this. I'm going to go delete that tree and now do it right. And that I want to be private because I pulled in things without being really careful. Even if I didn't pull in other people's tree hints, I'm just pulling in a marriage license or whatever, because I think it's right, but I'm not really 100% certain. But I'll go ahead and pull it in just because I'm doing a quick, quick initial construction of the tree to see what it looks like. And those I will always make private and unsearchable, because I'm just not confident that that information is correct, and I don't want other people seeing those mistakes. So I see, yeah, you've opened it up. Yeah, tree settings, yes. Okay, thank you for doing this. Privacy, and there's private tree, and then exclude it from searches. Yes, thank you.
Of course. Super easy. Okay, someone else had a question about adding a link to a person or event. So I'm going to keep this open for a second because I think they need to see this thing.
Okay, so you're creating a link, you mean from the source to our
Yeah.
relationship?
Yes.
Okay, so as I demonstrated, you can create links between a source and an event, a fact, over in the left-hand column, but I've not found any way of creating a link between the source and a relationship. So if that relationship comes in through a source, through a hint, and you click the source in that middle column, so if you have one that, if you try clicking one of the sources there. Okay, see, you have lines off to the right to relationships. The lines off to the left you can create by editing the event and adding a source to it, but I have never found a way of adding those lines to the right to the relationships. So, for example, on that death certificate that we saw, it gave the names of the parents and the name of the spouse, and so I can manually enter those people, but then there's no link between the source and that relationship, and I found no way of adding that link.
Yeah. I haven't found it either. Is ThruLines based on DNA, the tree, or both?
It's both. So it's people who match your DNA, and they built a tree, and there's someone in their tree that is the same as someone in your tree. So it's both.
When looking at your list of hints, is there a way to search within it or to organize it so that in-laws are at the end of the list?
No, I've not found any way of changing the order. And on what some people do is they like to upload photos, and they tend to come out first. So on a lot of my hint lists, I'll have 3 pages of photos before I actually get down to the what I consider more useful hints. I mean, photos are nice, but what I'm looking for is source documents that I can use as evidence of facts. And I've not found a way of, other than just ignoring it, which puts it over into the ignored column and removes it from the main column.
Can you use ThruLines if your tree is private?
Uh, if your tree is private, I would guess so. I don't know. My tree is not private. I would guess that probably would work, but it wouldn't work for the other person for sure, because your tree's private.
In name place or place names, I sometimes see extra commas, which I assume means something is missing. Is this
Yes.
correct to do?
Yes, it's okay. So there are in the U.S. there are some cities that are not in a county. Richmond, Virginia, I think, is one of those. There's a bunch of them, especially East Coast cities. Richmond, if I'm remembering this correctly, Richmond, Virginia is outside of any county. It is its own entity, and so there's no intervening level between it and the state. And so the right way to deal with that is to put 2 adjacent commas indicating that there is no county. You don't run into that very often, but there's at least a half a dozen or more cities along the East Coast like that.
And believe it or not, that was the last question.
Ah,
We
okay.
made it through quite a few, so thank you so much. Yeah, 18
Yeah.
answered questions, so
Okay. And right on time, 1 hour.
right
So
on
that worked
time,
out
so
good.
thank you. That was perfect. Well, thank you so much. I so appreciate your time and expertise. And everyone who joined us today, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening and hope to see everyone at our Tuesday program. Have a
All right.
wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you, Allison. Bye.
Bye.